Hi everyone, welcome to the live stream. I'm just gonna set up the things in the back and share the link and wait for people to come on in the stream. Welcome everyone. I'm just sharing the link and giving people some time to come in and join us. So feel free to get a drink, get yourself ready, and then we'll get started. Okay, here is the link. Took a minute to find, but there we go. We are live. Copy that. We are live on all platforms at the moment. We are on YouTube, on Twitter, through Periscope, and in the Facebook group, but we're sharing anyway, just to make sure no one is missing out. That would be a shame. Excited about today's live stream. Okay, I shared. Where is my screen? There you are. Hi, Clocksworth. Thank you for joining us. So glad you can be here. Let's see. Welcome, everyone. So nice to see you all joining in. We are on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook at the moment. So that's very exciting. Let's get started. So my name is Bailey. I am a member of the Stronghold System. Our body is 33 years old. We are from the Netherlands, so if you hear a weird accent, that must be it. Yeah, what else is there to know about us? We are the parent of an amazing child, and we started the Plural Association nonprofit, which is the first registered grassroots nonprofit for dissociative identity disorder and OSDD and all other forms of multiplicity under the Plural umbrella. And today I wanted to talk with you about that umbrella and share a little bit with you all about my own experiences with Plurality and go over some articles that we and other people wrote. So I'm really looking forward to this. Later in the stream, after I finished my own talking points, I will take some questions from you all that you can leave in the chat. Please do it then because I'm not going to find them back, but feel free to say hello in the chat if you want to. We had a lot of fun last week during the live stream with a lot of engagement in the different chats. So that's very exciting. If you are on YouTube and you comment, I can show your comment with your name on the screen. And if you're in the Facebook group, it just says Facebook user to protect your identity. So feel free to join on YouTube or in the alternation group on Facebook if that's safer for you because it won't show your name. Okay, my notes are here. I have two screens to make things easier. So we started the nonprofit in February, and we made the decision to make this nonprofit for all forms of plurality. And we have 1,000 reasons for that choice. And we want to go over a few in today's live stream. So for us, we were diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder in 2010, 11, and 12, around that time, 3 times at least, because we dealt with a lot of doubt and denial. And all the information we found was like really negative and really scary. And it wasn't until we met different kinds of plurals who showed us that it was okay to be plural and it was okay to accept ourselves in this way, that we really started to see a change in our plural experience. And that experience became a lot more, not so much positive, I don't think that's the word, but it became a lot more kind to each other instead of something that we had to get rid of as soon as possible. Through a lot of hard work, we found out that we could be together and support each other. And that really changed something in our system and our life. And I think we are alive because of that, because of the information that those plurals gave us. And so our experience with so many different varieties of plurals has been very positive. But in the online world, there is a lot of discourse, and we call that discourse in our community. And it can get very intense sometimes, and we don't like it because it invalidates people's lived experience. And I think it's very upsetting for all parties involved how much hurt there is in our own community. So I hope that our work and the work that the Plural Association does is unite that umbrella that plurality is. So let's talk a little bit about the umbrella and what that means. But first, I'm going to have a sip of my drink. Okay, so we have an umbrella label called plural or plurality. That's a word. If you want to use the word multiple as the umbrella, that's fine. It's not so much about the word we use to label it. What it means, though, is that everyone who experiences being many is included in that umbrella. And it's important because in 1994, multiple personality disorder became dissociative identity disorder. And a lot of people all of a sudden got excluded by the clinical community, and some also by the community that existed back in the day, believe it or not, in real life. And people, found community together there. Back in the day, there were phone lines that people could call every day of the week, and there were multiple meetups a week. And that information came from Jean Reisman, who started rainfo.org. And she's an 85-year-old survivor that was very active in the 90s with activism. And she's from America, but she spoke here in the Netherlands at a conference about MPD and DID back in the 90s. And she explained how much hurt there was in the community in the 90s when MPD became DID because the criteria changed, right? And I got diagnosed in 2012, and in 2013, the DSM-5 came out, and things were updated again and changed again. And I remember there was a lot of talk in the clinic where we came. I think it's called a clinic, like an inpatient facility for DID, and a lot of people there were scared that they would lose their diagnoses, and then everyone also got re-diagnosed, and so some people just didn't meet the criteria anymore, and they got excluded. And so we know one day the DSM-6 is going to be out, and we know the ICD-11 is already coming out, and they're making changes again, which is fine, I don't think the current criteria or the current description in the DSM is good enough at all. So it's good changes coming. I hope it's good change. But it's good it's not like a stagnant thing, in my opinion, because psychology is still learning more and more every day, right, about DID and OSDD. But something that's really missing in that research is other forms of plurality and just the experience and phenomenon of it. And it's being ignored, and that's a shame, really, because there is so much wisdom and knowledge there, because people have been plural and living as plurals for a lot longer than psychology has been around. So that knowledge is somewhere, and we got to find it back, right? I'm very excited to learn more about this and learn the techniques that the people used who came way before us. I don't know if we will, but I hope so. So the plural umbrella includes everyone who experiences manyness. So that can be people with DID and OSDD, right? They also fall under the plural umbrella. But then there are also a lot of other labels, like many, many labels that people came up with to explain and label their experience and find people who have a similar experience. And some of those people, they might have DID like myself. I have DID, right? I'm diagnosed with DID, but I also identify as plural. Why? Because the DSM says that we are all parts of the same one personality. And for me, I'm different people in the same body. I share my body with different people. And we, in our system for ourselves, if you believe something else for you, that's fine. But for my own system, we believe we are different people sharing one body. And all of our people have their own personality. And so because of that, we find it very important that there is such a label, like the plural label, that we can use to explain that experience. And if that means that it's called a cultural experience, that's okay for me. Like, I don't really care about that. It doesn't change my experience or my reality. Drink time. So let's go over some articles from powertotheplurals.com. The first article that I want to go over is the origin of endogenic systems and traumagenic system terminology. And this was a guest post by the Lunastus Collective. I hope I pronounced their name correctly. So they wrote an article, and because they coined the words endogenic and traumagenic. And there seems to be a lot of confusion still in our larger community about what that terminology means. So I say I have DID, and I'm diagnosed with DID, but it could be more fitting maybe for me to use the word traumagenic, because that just means my plurality was caused by trauma, but it doesn't necessarily pathologize it in a way where it says we're all parts of the same personality. However, we have no problem with saying or labeling or identifying with DID. We just don't really conform to the DSM-5 guidelines, or not guidelines, diagnostic criteria. So in the article, it explains that the term endogenic just means any, let me find it, sorry. Nope. It explains that endogenic is a term that means plurality caused by anything else than trauma. And by now they have moved away, the Lunastis Collective has moved away from this terminology and now uses the word adaptive plurality instead. But what I want to point out is that endogenic doesn't mean there is no trauma. It just means these people believe that trauma didn't cause their plurality. And last time we talked about the DSM-5 saying that DID is not caused by trauma, but associated with trauma. And there is a big difference between those two statements, right? Because if it would have said it's caused by trauma, that means we would have to prove our trauma before we could get a DID diagnosis, which would be very bad. We don't want that. So it's associated with early childhood trauma and overwhelming experiences. And really not that many people are overwhelming experiences free, right? And if we're going to determine what is trauma and what is overwhelming experiences when it's not our experience, we're going to end up trauma weighing. And that's something that's not okay. Like, that's really invalidating and hurtful, right? We want to avoid that. So it means that their plurality was not caused by or associated with early childhood trauma, but it doesn't mean that they didn't go to trauma. And I think it's really important to acknowledge and to understand, because it's very hurtful, I think, for endogenic systems, people who identify that way, who did go through trauma, through trauma, to constantly hear that they didn't, or that they did, but they just don't remember. So That's the endogenic article. I will link it and you can read it. It won't be linked in the Facebook group, but I will link it later to you. That's the article if you want to read the full thing. It's very interesting, actually. I wish I could go over the whole thing, but it would just be too long, because I want to go over the frequently asked resource about plurality and what it explains. So let's do that. So the first question in the frequently asked questions is, what does plural mean? So we have described it as everyone who self-identifies as being or having more than one individual within a single body. And those, it doesn't say that, but those beings could be part of the same personality or not, like whatever you feel for your own system. We think it's very important that people have the chance to use the language and labels that they feel fit them best. So plural simply means people who are many. It's an umbrella term that people may use freely to self-identify with. And it includes all sorts of people and experiences, including but in no way limited to how psychology explains multiplicity. Nor does it indicate how someone became many or if they are disordered or disabled in any way. Plural is an identity, a community, and an umbrella, a label, not a level or destination to reach. The Plural Association on Profit defines plurals in its legal documentation as everyone who self-identifies as being or having more than one individual within a single body. However, it's important to note that both our websites as well as our warm line and all the other work we do with the Plural Association, we welcome people to use the language they use, and we will be respectful and mindful of that language and copy it where possible. So there are many different types of plurals, and people chose beautiful words to explain those. I'm not going over in this live stream what those are, because I think it could get messy, and also I want to mainly speak from my own personal experience. I think that's most fair. I cannot speak for all plurals. Every plural system, whether they have DID or not, like they are plural in another way, every system is different, right? So my system is also different from every other system. So I am not like the know-it-all. I can only speak from my own personal experience and why I made certain choices with the Plural Association. So, for example, why an umbrella community? We truly believe that people with DID and people who are plural in different ways can learn so much from each other, and that we can truly grow together. We choose to look at our similarities rather than our differences, and we provide an inclusive of all space where we can grow and learn together, as together we are stronger. So the umbrella community, some people in response say that, don't DID people deserve their own spaces? And I believe that they for sure do. I think it's very important that the clinical community takes their responsibility and starts providing those spaces where diagnosed DID people can come together with just DID people and do really good, deep work there together. I also think that online, it would be good if there are DID-only spaces. I just have never figured out how to make it that way without extreme gatekeeping, because I can't ask people for their diagnostic papers, right? So it comes with a level of gatekeeping that I personally didn't want to be responsible for, because I'm not a doctor, I can't diagnose people, definitely not online. So they do, DID people, OSDD people deserve their own spaces. I believe a good place for that is a therapy setting. And I think outside of that, we can provide our own groups of peer-to-peer support online or in real life. And there are many groups for DID already. So I'd say promote those. Yeah, and I think we can learn from each other. And as long as we can do that in a respectful way, I think that's an amazing opportunity for everyone involved. Okay. the next question is plurality something new? So we know plurality, as in being many, has been around for ages, long before psychology was a thing. Most often described as spiritual experiences by mystics not from the West. Denying plurality exists outside of psychology is erasure and whitewashing. The umbrella term plural has been around for as long as the general internet has, and probably for that. If you want to learn more about that, there is a session in the Plural Positivity World Conference 2020, which you can find for free on YouTube/Plural events, about the history of plurality. And it's very, what's the word? Elaborative, sorry, and very interesting. So I highly recommend that if you want to learn more about the history of plurality specific and the label. Yep. Is there a common cause for being many? So back in the day, we thought there was a common cause for being gay or trans or, for example, autistic, and it turns out that was not true at all. And that misinformation and stigma is something that's still being battled today. So we chose to not make the same mistake when it comes to plurality and to be open-minded and inclusive of all instead. So for now, we don't know if there is a common cause. Maybe one day we will find out, and maybe the common cause is trauma. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it can be various things, and there is no common cause, but just various causes. But we don't know right now. And I think 50 years from now, we will look back at this time and be like, wow, we knew so little back then. And just as they did 50 years ago from now, right? So, yeah. Curious to see 50 years from now which conversations we will have here in this in these live streams. What about personhood and plurality? So if we strictly follow the medical model for DID and OSDD as described in the DSM-5, then we are parts of the personality and not multiple people in one body. This is not my opinion. This is what the DSM-5 explains. You might experience this very differently, just like we do. And we wrote a very detailed article about personhood in itself within plurality and DID on our powertotheplurals.com website if you're interested in that. The next question here is, what says the science? So one highly debated topic is whether psychology is really science, as psychology is theories. We know we cannot prove spiritual experiences either. Consciousness can be measured, and so much cannot yet be explained or proven. Psychology cannot repeat an experiment and always get the same results. They cannot, because all people are different. Even the medication they invent does not provide the same results for everyone. And also, the science doesn't really look that much into other forms of plurality, which is upsetting. There are some papers written and studies done, but they're small, and I don't know if you know this, but there has been over 20,000 papers and theories published on dissociative identity disorder since 2012, when the theory of structural dissociation came out. So that is definitely not the latest theory. A lot has been published since, but only very little has been published on other forms of plurality. What about the MRI studies that show switching is the next question. So alters or switches are visible on MRI scans in DID people and not in pretending actors, as they called it. But that in no way equals non-DID plural systems, as the same experiments are not done with endogenic, spiritual, or other plural systems. So there is an fMRI scan study where, together with AI, they have found a way to predict with 75% certainty if someone has DID. And they didn't include non-disordered systems in that study, which is really a shame. I hope one day they will. Until that time, we just cannot know which was different. Does the DSM mention plurality? Yes, but not with that word. The DSM-5 mentions cultural and religious cases of multiplicity quite often, and the DSM-4 even more elaborately. It excludes it from a DID diagnosis, but it does in no way invalidate these people, their existence or experience, so why should we? It's very interesting. We are releasing an article soon about OSDD and what it says about these cultural and religious cases of multiplicity. It called it common. Love that word. So hold on for that article, and we'll also contain a video together with Alexandrite System, who has OSDD. So we're very excited to release that soon. Does the DSM state that dissociative identity disorder is caused by trauma? So the DSM-5 describes that overwhelming experiences, traumatic events, and or abuse in childhood are associated with DID. It does not state it is caused by trauma, nor is trauma part of the criteria for the DID or OSDD diagnoses. Yes, research does show that most, if not all, DID is associated with trauma as well, but people with forms of non-disorder plurality do not have DID, and they are not in therapy for DID, and hence they are not researched and studied, nor do most of them want to be studied. So obviously that also plays a part, and why that is, it's not because they are unwilling, but because for so long we have been shunned and stigmatized, and like if they are already stigmatizing the disordered part that they deem or claim to understand, and this is the current state is bad, right? Like, come on, let's all admit it. Like, it's very hard to get therapy. It still takes years to get correctly diagnosed. And many of us are advocating and educating our therapists for free while paying for therapy. So, and then if you come in as a non-disordered system, it's even harder. Like, if you want therapy as a system, but you do not have DID or OSDD, or you do not identify with those labels, it's really extra hard to find a therapist who is able and willing to deal with that, and who has the plural competence, as we call that, to be able to facilitate in that. So to me, it makes sense that these people are scared to get studied, because there is so much stigma still going on. Okay, next question on the list. What about the DSM criteria? So criteria A states that we can self-report signs and symptoms, or parts, as they call it. Like explained, trauma is not a diagnostic criteria, which I conclude to, hence anyone can self-report parts, DID or not. There's also no point in denying someone's internal experience. It also explains in criteria D that spiritual cultural experiences of multiplicity exclude a DID diagnosis. It, however, does not say these people are then not many, or in their words, do not have self-reported parts. So I think that's really good for everyone also to be aware that criteria A says that we can self-report, right? Because many people are nervous about bringing up plurality or DID, OSDD to their therapist if they haven't yet, even though criteria A says that is fully within our right to do. Okay. When someone joins our community who is new, do we tell them about possible trauma? Is the question. Suggesting, or worse, demanding that trauma has to be part of the plural experience is unethical and really not appreciated in our community, as it is suggestive and gatekeeping. It's something therapists are told and trained not to do. So who are we to do so instead? In the case of DID or OSDD, all these years, protectors worked really hard to keep it a secret. It's never up to us to disclose that kind of information. It could lead to flooding, and we can't help people in crises. It's what the lawsuits in the 90s were about, so let's not repeat those mistakes. It could also very well be that someone joins a DID group but is actually plural, so it's safest and most ethical to not make the assumption. I don't really know what to add on to that. Pretty solid. Sarah Clark wrote this. My name is Bailey. Hello. If you're new here, if you missed the first few minutes. So the next question is, so some systems are trauma-free. Not many people in this world are trauma-free, let alone overwhelming experience-free. Just because some plurals say trauma did not cause their plurality does not equal these or all subgroups of plurals have never experienced childhood trauma. To incline otherwise is just as wrong as demanding or suggesting trauma, in my opinion. And I think it's very important that we give people the space and the time and the safety, feeling of safety that they can discover if they do have trauma. But I think currently the cultures that we have created, or not like that sounds like we did it on purpose, but that have developed in our communities aren't very open to that. Like if you ask questions about it, everyone says, yeah, of course you have trauma, or like it must have been like super bad. Like people add on to, how do I say that? People might ask like, oh, is this like bad enough to have developed the ID? And I don't think that's like fair to try to figure out together on the internet, right? I don't think it's very safe either. So yeah, it's a difficult topic, trauma. I think it's a topic that we should support each other in and not gatekeep around, because I think it's dangerous. Okay. Next question. Do plurals create alters on purpose? So although there are people who created or invited their system members and or plurality in general on purpose, most plurals find out they are many in the same way that we find out we have the ID. They can stop their plurality and they can stop switching. Yet some of them do not experience as an intrusion either, like some of us with the ID. As their plural experience is non-disordered, they most often do not experience amnesia and or do not experience distress or impairment in important areas of functioning. But just as people with the ID, most of them can't make their headmates go away. Let's have a drink. So, I want to add on to this. So back in the day, and we still see people sometimes use this word, we had the tulpomancy community, and that community consists out of people who deliberately created headmates, but some of them just found out they had them, just like I with the ID did. And then later discovered that like someone in their system has the job of creating people. And we see the same thing in the DID and OSDD community, that some people have someone in their system who creates system members. So right now this is called parogenic. And we don't really use the word tulpomancy anymore, besides some people who used to identify with it and hence still do because they feel that label suits them best. That's up to them. We chose to, with the plural association, to try to start the word, try to start using the word parogenic instead of tulpomancy. And also because we think it's more inclusive of people who are DID or OSDD or any other form of plurality, who have one or more people in their system who were created on purpose by someone else in their system. We have that experience ourselves. So we have some people in our system who were created out of a need and a necessity in our system, where we felt like there was a lack in our system, especially in the caretaking roles. And we have a positive experience with this. Another question is there a plural pride today? And the answer is yes. It's annually in the third week of July, celebrated during the Plural Acceptance Week. And everyone with many and our supporters are welcome to join. And you can find all information about that on Plural Events website, which is a collaborative effort of various plurals who organize events for plurals, including the Plural Acceptance Week and the Plural Pride Day. Okay. 3 main points to address when talking about DID or plurality with someone. 1, it's real. We know from the fMRI scans that with 75% certainty, we can see switches in the brain. 2, people with DID are not dangerous, but instead the statistic is that people with severe mental illness are over 10 times more likely to be victims of violent crimes than the general population. Plurals are not like the movies either. Plurality is not rare. That's number 3. 3.7% of 31,000 college students scored for DID in research from April 2019, and I can add links to all 3 of these little facts in the video description later on YouTube if you want to find them. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Okay, I think that was everything on my list. Let's have a look here. Yes. Okay. That was the article that I wanted to go over with you today, and the frequently asked questions that we see come up a lot. So we want to take some time to answer your questions. If you have any, please be respectful to the various forms of plurality and the experiences that people have. We're not here for a discourse, so please be gentle, be nice, and please know that I can only answer from my personal experience as well, so I cannot answer maybe all your questions, but I'm very curious to read what the questions that you came up with. Thank you. Also, there is a bit of a delay between what I'm saying and what you're hearing, so if there is some silence, sorry. Okay, here's a question. Laura says, do you think it's possible to switch only when you experience depression? Yeah, it could be. Or maybe that's like the only moment you notice. So it might happen also outside of that, but you might not be aware of it. Welcome, Casey and Terry. So nice to join. I'm taking questions from people who are watching this. I just went over the article on the Power to the Plurals website, and now I'm taking some questions if there are any. It's really nice to see all your comments, so that's great. I'm sketching up on the chat that I missed. Let's see. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Sorry. I wanted to ask last time, but do any of your alters, we call them personas, switch ages? We are all fictional though, which I also wanted to ask your thoughts on fictional alters. Oh, that's a very good question. Switch ages. So we have some people who are more fluid in their age. most people are pretty stagnant though in our system, and we have some people who wanted to grow up for a long time, but they cannot. And it's a painful subject for them. It's fine to you ask your question, but I just want to say like it's painful for them that they can't grow up whilst they want to. And then some people are also very scared that they will grow up. So we have people with all sorts of experiences in our system when it comes to aging. We also have a few fictional characters, but they don't front very often in our system. So, yeah. I don't know why, but that's just something that I observed. I think fictional alters are super valid and should also be treated that way. And I think it's a very hard, difficult life as a fictive, no matter your source, because various reasons, but it's just hard. Okay. Let's see. People are responding in the chat with their experience with age-lighting. It's so nice to see. This is their answer. Yes, we feel similarly in terms of fear of aging. Yeah, it happens. Any other questions? Feel free to throw them in the chat, and I will see if I have an answer for you. I already talked about a lot in my FAQ, I guess. That's okay. Wow, so much going on outside. Sorry for the noise. Mel says, non-plural related question, but where did you get the hoodie? It's so cute. Thank you so much. I got it at a Dutch store called large.com. I don't think it will ship to where you are if you're not here, but yeah. Wow. Again, sorry for the background noise. Can't help it. Okay, a question came in from someone on Facebook. It says, we commonly see questions around a lot of terminology. One we say often that hasn't been addressed today is host or core. Do you think that is something that everyone experiences, or do you think that, like many other aspects of plurality, it is unique to each system? Awesome question. Love it. We changed our mind 20,000 times on this topic. We have multiple people in our system who claim to be the host or who claim to be the core, which really doesn't make it easier. So we used to use the word host for our system a lot, but we have tried to move away from it more because, first of all, we didn't realize that host could mean something pretty, I don't even want to explain it, but could mean something like creepy, bug-wise, and we didn't realize it. Like, English is our second language, and so when we found out, we were like, ugh, that's creepy. We don't want to identify with that. And then also, we felt like our experience of having a host didn't really match the experience of other systems with a host, because our host, they often get burnout, like host burnout, and they go dormant when things get too much. And we also switch hosts a lot. Like, over the last few years, we switched hosts so many times. And the more we work together, the more we start, switching or something. And so it becomes less host-like. And then also because we work with hosts in our system, we had this weird rule that only certain people who have the same tone of voice could host, because else it would be way too obvious to other people who don't know us, that something was going on, right? That we have the ID and we didn't want like the neighbor or something to know. So that also played a role. But that meant that some people were like gatekeeped in our system and couldn't really be out as much as they wanted to. And so, yeah, things got complicated for us, for real. But so we don't use the word anymore for ourselves. If other people do, that's fine, of course. Please use the language you want to use. And if it exists, I don't know. Like, there are so many theories and so many ideas. I think if it exists in your system, then it exists in your system. Do I think it exists in everyone's system? No, absolutely not. And so, yeah, I think everyone should just figure it out for themselves if they can, and or together with a therapist or with a friend. Like, I don't mean like you have to do it by yourself. You can ask the community for help, obviously. But yeah, like, you gotta do the self-exploration, right? Like, I talked about this before, that we are so scared to look inside and see what we find, and maybe that's part of, the disordered experience. But if we don't, then we can't really know or find out. And I think sometimes we just like read this terminology somewhere on the internet and we're like, oh yeah, that must be it, without first going in and like talking with the others about what kind of terminology we feel suits our systems best. Okay, catching up on the chat. I missed a few things, I think. I also need a drink. Okay, another Facebook question. How do you suggest to deal with extremely differing opinions towards a situation? It feels like there's so much fighting inside. Thank you for your question, first of all. So, having different opinions is part of plurality, right? It's super hard. And what is important is that we find ways to validate ourselves and each other in our system, where we can safely express those opinions. And it's really hard. Like, it takes time, takes healing, takes cooperation, takes internal communication, takes so many things to get there. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not easy at all, but it's possible. And I think that is something that we, should give each other hope for, that it's possible. So if there is a lot of fighting, I would suggest, first of all, to start journaling and give people an outlet, a safe outlet, which is you, like your system, to talk about these things. And then to also ask them why they are upset, or why they have a different opinion, or why they like feel different, or why they want to fight about it, because obviously it's important for them if they're fighting about it. So I would just really try to listen and hear out your system and find out why they're having a different experience, and how you can mediate and negotiate and find the middle ground. Let's see. Here's another question from someone on Facebook. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at the same time. So if you're wondering, that's going on. Do you find, as we do, that when there's less gatekeeping as to who is fronting and you are allowed to switch freely, that you experience less distress? Less gatekeeping leading to less distress. Yes, for sure. Less anxiety, less fear, trying to keep control and trying to stay in the front takes a lot of mental energy for us. So when there is less gatekeeping as who is fronting, if we're with friends where we can safely switch, and truly be ourselves, then we're doing better than when we are in a setting where we have to mask and feel we have to hide ourselves, or certain people can't front. Let's see where we are. Here is a question by Casey and Terry. We are a topomancy system of 2, and we wish to create an animated TV show with characters with DID in the future. What do you think are some key points to help represent DID systems in the media? That's a very good question. Could write an article about that. But on the top of my head, I'd say don't make us the villains. And if we are like villains, then make us the good villains. Like I said the other day, something like, I wouldn't mind a movie where someone with DID goes after the bad guys. But the problem is that they always go after like innocent people, like in the movies. I don't want to mention the movies anyway. So not make us a villain, or make us like the good villain. That's not English. What's the word? like a superhero idea. I think it's also important to just see people with DID in media represented without it being the main thing. Like many of these series or movies, like it's the main subject, and I think it could be a lot more interesting if it was just like normalized on the side instead of the spectacle of the show. So yeah, that I don't know what else should be in there. Maybe you can hide some tips in there for how singletons can support plurals. Those are all my ideas. Someone says, I want to make a video game about us. Oh, but they're all fictive, so it would be very hard to get the rights. Being owned by a large corporation is awkward, to say the least. Wow. Yeah, for sure. I'm so sorry. That must be very hard to deal with. But a game with plural sounds epic. We got 100 comments. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in the chats. That's a lot of fun. A Facebook user question related to earlier question, what would be your perfect DID representation? Good question. Multiple people with DID so that it truly shows that we're all different. I think that that has to happen. Because every time it's presented, even if it would be good, it would still be presented as the one truth. Whereas actually in reality, we're all different and our experiences are all different. So having multiple people, multiple systems showing themselves, that I think that would be best. And I love that now on YouTube and other social media platforms, more and more people are showing their systems. Like Clockworks has an awesome YouTube channel, and many other people as well. So yeah, that's great. There's a long question here. Let me read it quickly. There is a question from Facebook. I will read it because it's a bit long. Awesome that you answer questions live. Here we go. We've always been 2, but I'm starting to experience hints from at least 2 others that's not me or my sister/other. One is very hostile. Those moments are very scary. And one is very young. I already know them since many years, but never knew they were actual alters. I thought I was crazy and made them up. We're not ready to welcome them yet as as serious actual others and push them away, but they do try to contact us rather than us contacting them. I'm very unsure what to do in this situation. Should I ignore them, acknowledge them? Are we actually ready without being aware of it? That's a very good question. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing so openly. I really appreciate it. I'm not a therapist, so please know that. But what I will do, I think if they are already contacting you, then your safest bet is to not ignore it and to respond to them. Because if you don't, they will try to find other ways to get your attention, and that can be less pretty. So if there is a way to communicate with them safely, I would definitely grab that chance and try to establish contact, and then find out maybe like why they're there, or what they would want from you, or how you can support each other, something like that. And in my experience, it works best to write like a letter to yourselves in a journal and to ask if they can respond. And since maybe you already have internal communication, I'm not really sure from your question. But if you can do it internally, that's also, of course, an option if you don't want to do it on paper or, yeah. I hope that helps. If you can, try to find a therapist. That's always good if you think that can help. And you have that possibility. So, yeah, I hope that helps. Thank you. Okay, let's see where we are. It's kind of hard to keep up with all the chats because we're on so many platforms. Okay, last question round call, and then I'm going to end the live stream if there are no other questions. So if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat now. This was a lot of fun again. We'll do it again in the future. Thank you, Colleen. I'm glad you like the hoodie. Okay, I think those were all the questions. Else we'll find out. Thank you so much for joining this stream. My name is Bailey from the Stronghold System. If you are financially able, please donate towards the Plural Association nonprofit. This is the first grassroots registered nonprofit for people with dissociative identity disorder, other specified dissociative disorder, and all other forms of multiplicity under the Plural umbrella. We do not receive any financial grants or government support. So if you are financially able, our donation options start at $3 per month. And with your donations, we do awesome things like these live streams, we send email campaigns, and we support over 3,000 plurals in 50 countries with 50 volunteers. Thank you so much for joining this live stream. We will be back another time, not next week Sunday probably, but another time somewhere in the near future. And yeah, thank you so much. This was fun. I had such a lovely time with you all again, and answering your questions. Really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Happy coming out day, everyone. And see you next time. Thank you for being here. Oh, Noodle System asked a question. It's okay, I can answer it. Are you still here, Noodle System? I'm sorry, I didn't see it on time. I can still answer it, it's fine. Let me know if you're still here before I answer it in your gut. Let's wait. What advice do you have for singlet partners or troubled plural systems? Wait, those are two different questions, yes? I think so. Oh yes, they're still here. Okay, good. Let's answer it. Okay, what advice do you have for singlet partners? of troubled plural systems. I get it now. Okay, great question. So I think it really varies per system though. Like, so that's the first thing we gotta like establish, because some people, they like a hand on their shoulder, for example, and other people, they like get really scared by that, right? So I think what's really important is to communicate, first of all, with your system and find out what your system needs to feel safe in the presence of a partner, especially during crisis, and to include this in your crisis plan if you have one. If not, we have a From Crisis to Safety Plan article on the powertotheplurals.com website. It's for free, so feel free to use that one. You can fill it in yourself. And then after you've established that together with your own system, you communicate those needs to your partner, and like, if you're out, you can like be very specific, right? Like, this person in me needs this and this person in me needs that. If you're not out, then you could just like explain like, oh, I don't know, like sometimes what I need. So I will just say in the moment, like, oh, please don't touch me, or please hold me, like whatever it is you need, right? But it can be really hard, like especially with rapid switching, like that could change like really quickly. So explaining that to your partner might like help. And then like, I've had quite some partners, and it's not bragging, quite the opposite. And like some people just don't get it. Like I don't know what else to say about it. Like some people just like, I don't know, they just don't get it at all. And that's very upsetting. If that's your case, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix it either. In my case, those relationships just didn't work out because people just didn't know like what I needed, or they would like not want to be in contact with me like when I wasn't doing okay. And also I taught myself to really hide on my bad days because of that. I really see that now that I have a safe partner, it's like really still hard. Like they want to be there for me and I just want to hide because that's what I like experienced over the years. And so that's like my default now, which is really sad actually. So it's really hard to build that trust with a partner, especially if you've been together for a long time and you only find out you're plural like somewhere in your relationship, or like if you start out plural. I went on a date once with someone, and this, like, it wasn't a date, it was like we went to drink coffee because they wanted to know more about plurality. And so you think they're pretty open-minded, right? Because that's why we went for coffee. But like apparently for them it was a date, and they just like tried to find something they could like get my attention with or whatever. Anyway, I didn't realize that in the beginning of this dating situation. And I was utterly confused when this person turned out to be like so incompatible in my like on my off days. And like they really missed some insight in what could help me, and didn't really like they weren't like not able to provide him what we needed in that moment. So what we learned from that is that it's super important to communicate to your partner, even if it changes every minute, right? Because you're switching so rapidly with what you need, because only then can they really, only then are they aware of what you need and can they try to provide in it. And if you do that and they still cannot provide for it, yeah, that's really hard. I don't really know like how to deal with that. I would just make sure you have protectors close to the front who can support you, and like keep talking with your partner outside of those crisis moments of what you expect during crises. Yeah, I hope that helps. I hope that answers it. A little bit. Like, I'm not a relationship therapist, but I hope that helps a little bit. You are so welcome, Noodle System. Thank you so much for being here and for answering your question. I'm glad I got to it last minute. Okay, it's 9 o'clock for me. I'm going to end the stream now. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Have a fantastic coming out day and weekend. And we'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.